If God doesn't exist, why are we still talking about him? Why are there debates, podcasts, entire YouTube channels dedicated to arguing against something that, according to many people, isn't even real? I mean, think about it. You don't see people making videos trying to disprove Santa Claus, or Zeus, or unicorns. So what is it about God that keeps coming up again and again? Let's talk about that. And just to be clear, this is not an attack on atheists. Seriously, a lot of people who don't believe in God have thought deeply about it. Some have gone through difficult experiences with religion. Some value logic, science, and evidence. So this isn't about winning an argument. It's about asking better questions. Because sometimes the most important conversations aren't about proving something, but about understanding why we think the way we do. So let's walk through this together. Let's start with something simple. When something truly doesn't exist and has no relevance, you usually feel indifferent toward it. It doesn't bother you. You don't think about it. You don't spend time arguing against it. But when it comes to God, that's often not what we see. Instead, we see strong opinions, emotional reactions, ongoing debates. Now, of course, not every atheist feels this way. Some genuinely don't care. But culturally, the topic of God seems to carry weight. And that raises a question. If God is truly nothing, why does the idea of him still provoke something? Why not just ignore it completely? One of the most common arguments against God is this: if God is good, why is there so much suffering in the world? That's a powerful question, and honestly, it should be taken seriously. But notice what's underneath it. When we say something is wrong or unjust, we're assuming there is such a thing as real, objective morality. Not just opinions, not just preferences, but something that is truly right or wrong, regardless of culture or time. So here's the deeper question. If there is no God, where does that moral standard come from? Is it just human agreement, evolution, social constructs? Because if that's the case, then evil becomes relative. And yet, most of us don't live that way. We don't treat injustice as just a perspective. We feel it's real. So where does that come from? Now let's be honest about something important. A lot of people reject belief in God, not because of God himself, but because of what they've seen in religion. Hypocrisy, control, judgment, abuse of power. And those things are real. They've happened. So if that's part of your story, your skepticism makes sense. But here's something interesting. Jesus himself was one of the strongest critics of religious hypocrisy. He challenged fake spirituality. He called out people who used religion for status or control. He valued authenticity over appearances. So maybe the problem isn't belief in God, but the distortion of it. Maybe rejecting hypocrisy doesn't automatically mean rejecting God. Here's a question that's a bit more personal. Why do you believe what you believe? Is it because you've genuinely explored the question of God from all sides? Or is it partly a reaction against something you've seen, experienced, or rejected? Because there's a difference between "I've searched for truth and landed here" and "I don't want this to be true." And that's not a judgment, it's just something worth reflecting on. We all have biases. We all have experiences that shape us. So the real question is, are we open to wherever the truth leads, even if it challenges us? Let's zoom out a bit. Across cultures, generations, and history, humans have always asked the same questions. Why am I here? Does my life matter? Is there a purpose to all of this? And these aren't just intellectual questions. They're deeply personal. We want our lives to mean something. We want love to matter. We want justice to be real. But if reality is ultimately just matter and energy, no design, no intention, then meaning becomes something we create, not something we discover. And that leads to another question. If meaning is something we invent, is it truly meaningful? Or is it temporary, dependent on our perspective? The Christian view says something different, that our desire for meaning isn't random. It points to something real. If God is irrelevant, why do themes connected to God keep showing up everywhere? Look at culture. Music talks about heaven, hell, the soul, redemption. Movies explore good versus evil, sacrifice, temptation. Stories constantly circle back to ideas of light and darkness. Even in a secular world, these themes don't disappear. They evolve, they get rebranded, but they stay. So here's the question. If these ideas are purely fictional, why do they resonate so deeply? Why do they keep returning? Maybe it's just human imagination, or maybe they reflect something real about how we experience the world. A common statement is, there's no proof for God. And it's true. There's no scientific experiment that can put God in a lab. But here's something to consider. Not everything we believe in is based on scientific proof. Love, consciousness, meaning, beauty. These are real parts of human experience, but they're not measurable in a lab. We accept them because they're experienced, not because they're proven in a controlled environment. So the question becomes, are we applying a different standard to God than we do to other important realities? And if so, why? The Christian claim isn't just that God exists, it's that God is personal, that He knows you, that He cares, that He has something to say about how you live. And that's where things get real. Because if God exists in that way, it's not just an idea, it affects your life, your choices, your priorities, your identity. So maybe the question isn't just, is there evidence for God? But also, what would it mean for me if God were real? Because sometimes the resistance isn't intellectual, it's personal. So let me ask you this, honestly. If God were real, would you want to know Him? Or would you rather He didn't exist? That question can reveal a lot, because it shifts the conversation from abstract arguments to something much more personal. Maybe you're someone who strongly speaks against religion. Maybe you genuinely believe you're helping people, protecting them from something false. And that intention can be sincere. But then comes a fair question. What do you offer in its place? If you take away belief in God, what becomes the foundation? What grounds human value? What gives lasting meaning? What provides hope beyond circumstances? Because when you remove something foundational, it matters what replaces it. And to be fair, many atheists build meaningful lives, relationships, purpose, personal values. Those things matter. They're real. But here's the deeper question. Are they ultimately enough? Because all of those things can change. People leave. Circumstances shift. Life is unpredictable. So what happens when everything you built your meaning on gets shaken? Is there something that remains? Or does everything depend on things that can disappear? These aren't easy questions, and they're not meant to trap you. They're meant to make you think. I'm not asking you to blindly believe anything, but I am asking you not to dismiss this too quickly. Because if God is real, that's not just an interesting idea. That's not just another opinion. That changes everything. It means reality is not random. It means your life has a purpose beyond what you choose for it. It means good and evil are not just human inventions. And it means you're not the highest authority anymore. And that's where it gets serious. Because if God truly exists, and not just as an idea, but as a personal, powerful being, then ignoring Him isn't neutral. It's a decision. You can ignore something weaker than you. You can walk away from something equal to you. But if something exists that is greater than you, more powerful than you, the source of everything, you don't really escape that. At most, you delay facing it. So the question becomes, if there's even a real possibility that God exists, is it wise to just assume He doesn't? Is it worth building your entire life on that assumption? If it turns out you were wrong about the biggest question there is, if God is real, you can't avoid Him forever. One day, He will come back by you. So maybe the real issue isn't just, is there enough evidence? But, am I willing to take this seriously if it might be true? Because if it is, it says everything about your eternity. So don't ignore the question. Lean into it. Ask. Search. Be honest. Because if God is real, you don't want to spend your whole life being wrong about that.